So coming up, we have a speaker who's a passionate medical cannabis advocate who's done some good organizing this year to help to try to affect some policy change and make it easier for people to have access. And one of the things we like to do at Hash Bash is recognize people who are doing some work in the year and offer up this forum to let people know what's going on. And so it's a pleasure to introduce to you, for the first time in Hash Bash, Summer Sky.
Thank you so much for having me, Jamie Lowell. Thank you for inviting me here. And before I speak, I just want to say rest in peace to John Sinclair, rest in peace to Rick Thompson, rest in peace to every single person who has been negatively impacted by the war on drugs. People that suffered from various different medical conditions that could have been treated by cannabis, people that unfortunately had to spend their entire lives incarcerated. It's an incredibly sad situation, and it just simply should not be happening. And so, my name is Summer Sky, and I have been incredibly passionate about medical cannabis since I was 16 years old. A little bit of background about me. I immediately went into the cannabis industry after I graduated from Central at the age of 21. There's truly no need for me to really discuss anything else that I've done professionally. Today is the 53rd Hash Bash celebration, and it's about the journey and the fight for being able to use cannabis medicinally and recreationally. In fact, just being able to work in cannabis and being able to stand here today is absolutely a privilege. And a privilege that some people will never be able to experience because they're incarcerated or they passed away before they ever had the opportunity. And so cannabis, it was legalized medically in Michigan and even recreationally, but, I recognize that privilege in myself, and I'll never take that for granted. So I would like to share a little bit of a sad story, so just be prepared. But when I was 16 years old, my 4-year-old cousin passed away from a rare, undiagnosable form of epilepsy. The medication that he was on, it left him unable to walk or talk. His entire life, he essentially remained an infant that continued to grow in height. I was actually able to go on a Make-A-Wish trip with him to Disney with my family and my grandma the year before he passed away, and I am so thankful for the time that I was able to spend with him while he was still on Earth. After his passing on Valentine's Day of 2016, I was incredibly shocked and confused about my cousin's death. I started researching epilepsy cures, epilepsy treatment, and I just wanted to find answers, any clues. And I eventually found all these different stories of parents that would bring their children to Colorado so that they could get safe, legal access to medicine that would treat and even stop their seizures for their children. And ever since then, I have been incredibly passionate about the medical side of cannabis and an advocate for it. And just to clarify, I'm not a doctor, but in my opinion, if cannabis was an option for my cousin, there is no doubt in my soul that he would not only be alive, but he would have been able to talk and walk. Because the inabilities were side effects of the medications to subdue his seizures. And ever since then, I have been an advocate. And so during my undergrad, when I studied event management, a friend of mine gave me a magazine where they interviewed the VP of MJ BizCon, and it made me realize that I could work in the cannabis industry and help people and advocate for medical and decriminalized cannabis. And after that, I knew that I was going to work in cannabis and that there would be nothing to stop me.
You're the only one with the audio.
About a year and a half into my career,
That's the
I
audio.
received the worst phone call I could ever hear.
My batteries were dead.
My grandma
I had
died.
to plug into the...
She was essentially like my second mother. Throughout the last 2 decades of
Hey,
her
Ronnie,
life,
you
she
made-
suffered
did
with
you try
rheumatoid
calling me?
arthritis.
I got these phone calls back
The
from
last 10
Nancy.
years of her life,
First
she
of
could
all, I wouldn't
barely
be
open
able
her
to hear
hands.
anything.
She could really only
And
make
I was
use of her
busy.
pointer finger and
I
her
thought it
thumb.
might have been you.
But it was still incredibly difficult for her to pick up things and just live her daily life.
Turned out my batteries did, so I missed the very beginning.
And so with that,
Is it charged
having
now?
that constant
Well, I'm
chronic pain,
using,
it's debilitating for anyone.
Touch. Here.
And I always, ever since I became an advocate, I started advocating for her to at least take CBD
How was the
gummies,
band thing last night?
topicals, but she was always
Oh,
very reluctant.
Yeah.
I took
She
Jay over to
eventually
the
talked to
Halidome.
her doctor
I took
about
Jay to the
it,
Halidome.
and
What's
Jay?
that, guys?
they
Jay
actually
Anderson?
tried to take away her medicine that she was physically addicted to in order to survive if they ever found cannabis in her system.
Yeah.
So,
Given topicals wouldn't show up on a drug test, she was more open to them, but it would only subdue
We'll
the
be right
pain.
here smoking
It
some
didn't
dope,
really
alright?
treat it as much as it could have with other options. And just because of the generation that she grew up in, she was incredibly reluctant to try it in general. And if my grandma, doctors were supportive of medical cannabis to treat her rheumatoid arthritis, I believe that not only would have extended her life, but it also would have made her quality of life so much more better, and just her existence so much more bearable. And I couldn't save her. And even though I tried, that generation is just scared because they were fed propaganda their entire lives. And when I saw my grandma in her living room, on the day I got the call, there were about 12 different pill bottles on her coffee table. And it's so sad because instead of using all these different laboratory-made medicines, we could just be using plant medicine. The system is broken. The fact that it's okay for... And unfortunately, the story does continue. Last Thanksgiving, my dad was having some health issues to the point where he couldn't participate in the holiday, and he actually had to have my mom drive him to the hospital. And it was discovered that he actually had lung cancer. And that was one of the scariest moments I've ever experienced in my whole life. And I immediately contacted my resources and my support systems to get RSO to treat my dad. With an extremely short notice, I would like to give a huge shout out to Travis, the founder of North Coast, because he was able to supply my dad with a seemingly endless supply of RSO to treat his cancer. So Travis started a nonprofit called The Forgotten, where he helps supply people with RSO to treat various different conditions. So if you know someone that needs RSO, please contact Travis with North Coast, and he would be more than happy to help you. And then in conjunction with chemotherapy and eating apricot seeds, which was a tip from my friend Corey, I got the news back in February that the doctors found that the cancer has stopped spreading and actually has shrunk. And in fact, the doctor said that they have never seen anyone in their entire lives seemingly beat cancer as fast as my dad did.
Yeah!
Unfortunately, we're still not out of the woods yet, as wonderful as that is. We still have to have some tests, but RSO and apricot seeds absolutely helped my dad with diminishing his cancer. I don't know what I would have done without the donation of RSO, the apricot seeds, and I am just so absolutely thankful for everyone that came together to help my dad. I couldn't say my cousin, I couldn't say my grandma, but I had to say my dad. And unfortunately, not everyone is as lucky as my dad. I would like to pay another tribute to Rick Thompson, who did pass away from cancer. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people who unfortunately never had access to cannabis to treat their cancer, their epilepsy, their rheumatoid arthritis, various different conditions, and it is just absolutely devastating. And if more doctors were open to cannabis as a treatment, there would be far less deaths from preventable illnesses and cancer. Again, I'm not a doctor, that's just my opinion. And at the forefront of it all, there absolutely would be no Ashback without John Sinclair. And so rest in peace again, John. It is, as a community, it is our responsibility to continue to fight for what is right and how this plant should be handled medically and legally. As scary as it can be to use your voice, it really is all that we have as people and individuals. It is our most powerful tool and asset for talking about and fighting for what is right, instead of just letting the system dictate how the industry should be and how the plant should be treated. And we are only going to continue to lose our rights by turning a blind eye. It is imperative that all of us rally together and talk about what is right and how the industry should be and how the caregiver program should be. Thank you again for having me and for listening to me today. I never would have anticipated that I would have an opportunity to speak at Ashback, and it is absolutely an honor to be a part of this community.
Wow, it's a big interview.
My closing is that, I empower all of you to fight for medical care for your loved ones and family members before it's too late. Thank you.
Thank you.